Sales, marketing, and RevOps. It's sink or swim out there, and yesterday's strategies and tactics won't help you today. This is Revenue Today, and I'm your host, Jared Rodman. Join me as we interview revenue leaders in our community to learn what steps we could take right now to help you scale yourself and your company. Revenue Today is sponsored by RevGenius, and we're on a mission to bring inspiration and creativity to all revenue professionals in the world.
All right. Today's guest is somebody that empathizes greatly with the bootstrapped entrepreneur's journey, has been featured in New York Times, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Inc., Entrepreneur Magazine, and prominent industry publications like Mashable, TechCrunch, and VentureBeat. Two-time exited founder, has been named a 30 under 30 entrepreneur in Inc. His current company, MicroAcquire, has facilitated more than 500 million in sales on the platform. Today's guest is the CEO of MicroAcquire, Andrew Gazdecki. Welcome.
Thanks, Jared. That was that's one hell of an intro. I dig it. Excited to be here.
So excited to have you, Andrew. And we've known each other for a few months now, and it's so great to have you on. So I want to start. We start all shows with this question. It's April 2022 right now. Debunk a myth about generating revenue today.
I would definitely probably go towards you don't need venture capital to build a company. What I mean by that is, I know it's maybe mind-blowing to say this, but you can build a company with paying customers. Either that or even broader, you don't need to build $1 billion company to be successful as an entrepreneur.
Powerful. Why do you think so many people think that you do need it?
It's all you read about. And it go on any sort of all those publications that you mentioned. You just read over and over and over, 100 million raised, 200 million raised. And what I think is kind of happening in just the startup ecosystem is, these vanity metrics are being celebrated. And so as a young entrepreneur, you read that and you want to be successful in, let's say building a startup. And so you feel that's the path to success. And really your odds, just to break it down statistically. So when you start a company, about 0.5% of startups get actual VC funded. And I can just assume a large portion of those are searching for VC funding. And then once you do get venture funded, only 1% reach a unicorn or $1 billion valuation. Now, once you hit that valuation, that's still you can be valued at $1 billion. But if you take that to market, I would put money you wouldn't even sell for half of that. So I guess put it another way, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, go into startups not really, just understanding what they want out of a startup. I'm of the belief that a lot of entrepreneurs are, building companies to, serve customers, and better their personal lives, become financially secure, really make a dent in the world. And, you don't have to, build this, huge, massive company to reach those results. And I think, the sadder part is, I got a ton of buddies who run, really large companies and they hate their job. They got board meetings, they're constantly they got some number they got to hit for the quarter. They're stressed out all the fucking time. And then over on MicroAcquire, what I see, and this is why I'm, so passionate about this, and just one of my previous companies, Business Apps, we bootstrapped, we only raised 100,000. I didn't build the biggest company, but it, the exit, changed my life. I was very, very fortunate and grateful for that. But my point being is, I think just a lot of entrepreneurs would just be much happier running, a profitable, sustainable business, way less stress, And stress is like the number one like killer of like a person. So like when you go, and then I think the fucking crazier part is, sorry to swear. I swear a lot. It's a bad
It's
habit.
cool.
You know, building, that big of a company, especially on your first try, um, you can avoid so many mistakes by just, you know, avoiding venture capital, avoiding all the stuff that you read about that, all the startups that, you hear about that are just crushing it. And build a company that, really makes you happy and like doesn't stress you out and, focuses on a customer that you absolutely love serving. To me, and then also to add one more layer to that, if you can afford it and you've kind of found product market fit, etc. Do it with the team that you care about. That's winning in my book. I think a lot of founders give up too early, and there's just that's an onion we could really peel back. But I think just a lot of entrepreneurs kind of go into startups. They raise money because they think that's how the game is played, and that's kind of the only option. And that's just not the case. Every day at MicroAcquire, I see founders selling their companies and getting acquired for millions of dollars, and you'll never read about it in Forbes, Inc., or TechCrunch or whatever. But they own the whole business. So if you sell a business for, I mean, like if you sold, a business for $10 million, like, would you be upset if you own like the whole business and you get to walk away with that? You
Not
don't have to
not
answer that.
not at all.
Yeah, I think most people would. Even it's smaller, like even 1 or 2 or 3 million. That's enough to buy a house cash, put some money. I'm not gonna give like investment advice, but like, buy some index funds. Don't look at it until you're 70. That like you're set. And I think there's just a lot of founders that's what they really want, but they feel they have to go down this other path to achieve that, and it's just simply not true.
And there's unicorn companies. Mailchimp comes to mind right away. That have bootstrapped that high, right? What do you think? How do you think they got there with the bootstrap mentality? Like for the people listening that want to take it a little further than that, but are intrigued with the idea of not raising money. I'm curious to hear your feedback.
Yeah. I mean, I should note, so MicroAcquire is venture backed. So, understanding like when venture capital makes sense and when it doesn't, I think is also equally as important. But I'll answer your question in a second, but just getting your first win under your belt, just getting financially secure, and then do whatever you want, like swing for the fences, go lay on a beach, whatever. I think like my recommended path I always tell entrepreneurs is, start an agency, because that's a great way to kind of, find startup ideas. You see this common problem over and over, productize that, turn that into a SaaS, bootstrap it, because then you're building an asset that you can sell. And once you sell it, swing for the fences, do whatever you want, disrupt the market. But Mailchimp is kind of like an outlier. I mean, they've been around for like 20 years, so like 20 years of just compounded growth. Those are rare, those are very, very rare. So it's hard to say, I'm going to bootstrap to, billions of dollars, because I think there's maybe like 20 that have done that. If that, I could be totally wrong. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but um, I mean, it's possible, I think is kind of the rules. And I think the better part about bootstrapping too, just to note, is like if you bootstrap a company and you're generating revenue, you're growing, you can change courses. You can get to a point, and this almost happened to me in my journey at business apps where, we were growing rapidly. We met with every, VC firm on Sand Hill Row, et cetera. But I was young, and I was, I kind of felt like, you know, an analogy I like to use is when you're bootstrapping a startup, you can sell the business for whatever you want. You can sell it whenever you want. You don't have any approvals. So I was at the blackjack table, like, okay, now I'm terrible with analogies, but just go with me. I was in the money, I was like, I have a multi-million-dollar business on my hands, but if I raise additional capital, those chips go away. And then it's like, all right, now you got to make a lot more chips and then you can have a liquidity event. Um, so, I would say, the longer you can bootstrap, you know, if you do decide to go raise venture capital, you'll have, better understanding of where to spend. You'll be more confident in terms of, like where you want to take the business. And then it all really comes down to, personal ambition and market opportunity. And just from personal experience with like MicroAcquire, I bootstrapped that company to about like 700,000 in recurring revenue. And then the market opportunity was so huge, and just my personal ambition with a couple of prior wins. And then the opportunity to help, uh, millions of entrepreneurs sell their businesses and have a life-changing outcome. Uh, that was very appealing, and we could attack that problem, more aggressively and faster. Um, but again, yeah, like for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think it doesn't even cross their mind that that's a viable path, is to, forego like the typical Silicon Valley route of success of getting a YC, getting to these magazines, raise a bunch of money. Your chances of, creating, a life-changing outcome are just far higher if you don't raise venture capital. And that also applies to MicroAcquire too. Like I know the odds. Like I know I have a 1% chance of becoming a unicorn. But I don't really care because my goal is to help entrepreneurs succeed and have their companies acquired. But I think going through that sort of thought process and like really, really thinking about what you want out of your startup, for me, it's disrupting and changing a market. For my first business, I grew up like broke, I wanted to become financially stable. And so, really, really understanding what you want out of a startup, I think is crucially important. And for those looking to raise venture capital, I think, another way to kind of think about it is, don't do it for the money. Like, don't do it for the money. Do it for the impact. Do it for if you want to disrupt something, in a big market, maybe it's old market, um, and you want to have that impact, because again, the chances of a liquidity event for a startup that has raised venture capital, and I see this all the time at MicroAcquire. And another example I'll give you is, I see businesses all the time that come on to MicroAcquire. They've raised a few million, doing really good. Um, but they've raised like 5, 6, $7 million, and they get an offer for, $20 million. And then they have like two co-founders. And so when you break all that down, the outcome for them isn't as, it would be much better if, cause you have a liquidation preference. They probably raised over the 20 million, offer in terms of valuation. And so, they just get crushed down in terms of their outcome, so to speak. So, going back to my first point, yeah, you know, really think hard about what you want out of a startup, and then align your decisions ruthlessly around that, ruthlessly, because some of these decisions that we're talking about are not reversible. And every other decision in your business is reversible.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all that. That was some awesome knowledge. Now, diving in, what are some KPIs that are important to you today as you run MicroAcquire?
So we have three that we track religiously. One is acquisitions closed. We're a startup acquisition marketplace, so we're not doing our job if startups aren't getting acquired. We'd like to see average deal size go up. The average acquisition on MicroAcquire is around, depending on the month, 6, 7, 800,000. I think fully averaged about 700,000. And then also just trust, trust within, the brand, and knowing that, startups on MicroAcquire are vetted, our buyers are vetted, and we have the best possible, buyer and seller experience for people looking to um, either acquire a business or, get acquired for their business.
How do you measure trust?
That's a good question. It's a tricky one because we run NPS scores, but mainly it's just through it's kind of like an effect where acquisitions are very like relationship based. There's a good quote by Warren Buffett: you can't do a good deal with a bad person. So the way we measure trust, I guess, would kind of be towards acquisitions, and then just customer sentiment through feedback and that sort of stuff. So um, you know vetting buyers, like, are they legit? Do they have, funds on hand? Are they accessing, startups, with the intention of buying them? So there's a number of different factors. I know we have like a checklist. Um, but yeah, that's another onion with like a lot of the different layers. A lot of it's brand, just having a brand that people, word of mouth where people share their success stories on MicroAcquire. I think that's probably my answer is, where, I could say, MicroAcquire is a trusted marketplace, but when we have like all these customers coming out saying like, hey, I got MicroAcquired, it was awesome, or I just signed up for MicroAcquire, the deals are just stuff like that. I think those are good indications of trust. And then also like the blatant ones is no scam. So
Yeah.
when you're dealing with acquiring a business, there's so much process involved. And so we try to simplify that and streamline it. So when you do look to acquire a business or sell your business, MicroAcquire and our team, we have like tooling that helps the process, that makes it easier to give you confidence when you're selling or potentially buying a business.
Yeah, it is hard to measure. And I think what you're doing outside of, what you described, like by coming out with like acquisition type agreements and standardizing that and creating like new, easier documentation might create or add some trust too, right?
Yeah, I mean, my like goal with MicroAcquire, and I think this is something that is so needed, just like for the startup ecosystem and just entrepreneurship in general, is just trusted marketplace for entrepreneurship through acquisition. Like, not everyone has a great idea. Some people are great at sales, some people are great at marketing. And so one thing that we think about a lot at MicroAcquire is how can we help people that, a lot of our buyers are private equity firms, role plays. We even see venture-backed companies acquiring venture-backed companies. We even see bootstrap companies acquiring bootstrap companies. But what we want to do is we want to create the market. We want to standardize the market, because a lot of times, two people kind of get to terms like, hey, I'll buy your company. And they're like, what do we do? Because maybe it's their first acquisition. So, we want to standardize that step by step. So when you get a letter of intent, which is kind of like the first step of an acquisition process, you're not signing it. And I went through this personally, where you sign it and it's just like, it's almost like you're entering a dark tunnel. You have no idea what's coming next. And so we want to bring kind of light to that tunnel for both sides. So, this is step 2. We're going to do some due diligence. Step 3, we're going to, work on an asset purchase agreement. Step 4, we're going to work out a plan to transfer the assets, secure financing, and then put it in escrow and close the deal. There's obviously many more steps. I'm oversimplifying it, but I think if we're able to educate, people that are interested in acquisitions but don't necessarily know how, we can exponentially increase the TAM of the market that we sell to. So instead of just private equity, and it's kind of like that theme of I always like Shopify as like arm the rebels, where, we want to bring something that was once, just available to, highly sophisticated private equity firms and standardize it to the point where, anyone can buy a business. Because right now, acquiring a business kind of feels like, yeah, another one of my analogies, but like you're on eBay, but it's on the blockchain. You gotta like buy some crypto coins, and you feel like you're getting scammed somewhere somehow. You feel like you're missing a step. So by building tooling that helps you analyze the health of a company, um, or helps you, quickly meet the right buyer or have more information on the buyer. Those are the types of tools that I think can really expand, uh, entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Incredible. And I do think that's big with trust, right? Like bringing transparency to the sale. Like if I wouldn't, without MicroAcquire, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd call a lawyer.
Yeah,
As I hope most people would do.
yeah, and we have lawyers too. We have a marketplace inside of MicroAcquire where you can actually speak to and hire attorneys, as well as like due diligence or accounting, tax planning. Because when you sell your business, you're gonna have a nice tax bill. It's gonna sting a little bit, so trying to reduce that as much as possible. We also have advisors too. We have M&A advisors available. So if you go into MicroAcquire and you're like, "Whoa, I have no idea what to do," we have professionals that you can hire at a rate much cheaper than you'd see elsewhere. Because fun facts, most advisors spend half of their spend on marketing to acquire customers, or generate through referrals, and so we refer them, startups, for them to help get acquired if they need it. So we have tooling that helps if you want to go down an automated path, but then also if you need some professional guidance, we provide that too.
So what's been keeping you up at night?
Probably my son, my my 2-year-old son. But business wise, I'm just kidding. My son sleeps like a rock. What keeps me up at night? That's a good question. Re- Honestly, not much. Being this is like my fifth startup. Like if you count like ones in college and stuff, I've just gotten used to, like, I don't really get stressed out too much. I don't really get too highs on the highs. I don't really get too lows on the lows. Um, I don't really have like I gotta win the whole market like type of sort of thought process. I think that can be stressful. I'm just trying to build the platform that I wish I had when I was selling two different businesses prior. But if I had to give you an answer, I mean, man, I wish there was a button I can click and then our 2-year roadmap is just done. Like that's what keeps me up at night. Like I wish how do I make a button where just I can accelerate all the tools that we want to build?
So yeah, it's funny because I often say the biggest power you could have as a founder in a high stress job is remaining level, and is great.
It's true because I mean, if I'll give you an example. Let's say like you're running a B2B SaaS company and you're constantly in knife fight, sales calls, and you have this one competitor that is just in every single call, and you lose a deal to them. And then if the founder broadcasts that to the company, like, there's so much focus on just, you know, like the founder is stressed out for that specific, it could be a number of different things, but that's just one that comes to mind. It permeates through the culture of the business. And so as a founder, your job is really to make your team feel safe and feel that, you know, we're focusing on the right things. We have a clear direction of, what we need to accomplish and what success looks like and how we're measuring that. And then also just laughing a lot. Like, I think one of the most underrated things that a lot of founders don't do is just have fun. Like, it's such a fun journey. And I think having just, I always say 90% of building a startup is mindset. It just, not getting too high because tomorrow might suck. And then, you might sleep bad, it just, it's, it's part of the game, and if you learn to love the game and, another analogy I like to use, my team hates my analogies, but I run with them. But, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, I want to start a startup, try to think of something that would feel like a video game to you, where it's just something that it's not work to you. It's fun. Like, and the reason I say that is it's so hard to compete against a founder where it's fun to them and it's work to you. Cause they're gonna, put in like the extra time. They're gonna, make, they're gonna think longer term. Like they're gonna think like they're not gonna have short-sighted, goals in place. So yeah, and again, I want to repeat: have fun with your team. High five. That's what startups are all about.
So, taking this to the people that are like not there with their mindset, right? Like that are stressed and unfortunately, um, not level. What advice would you have that could potentially help them?
Be patient. Be patient. I think the worst thing you could do is, not take care of yourself. So, get good sleep. This isn't going to surprise everybody, but eat healthy, exercise. Like if you're not, taking care of yourself, that's just going to increase like stress levels and just kind of make things worse. And then number two, I always say, I talk to a lot of founders where they're like, oh, we're only doing like 3 million in revenue or something like that, or like 5 million. And I'm like, the first question I always ask is like, where were you 2 years ago? They're like, oh, like, you know, 400K or something like that. And then I ask, did you expect to be where you are today, like 2 years ago? And they're like, oh, no. And I'm like, see, so be grateful for like the progress you've made. Like, give yourself a pat on the back. Like, and then the second thing to definitely avoid, I guess is the third thing. Don't compare your startup to other startups. Like there's always going to be a startup growing faster than you. There's always going to be a startup, you know, touting a huge valuation. There's always going to be another startup just absolutely crushing it, getting, but just do you, tune out the noise.
You're reading my mind. Such good advice, man. What excites you the most about the future?
I would say how much startups have been democratized. So, you know, and this again, I don't want to plug MicroAcquire too much, but this is just kind of what I see on a daily basis. But, we see startups being created, multi-million dollar startups fully owned by people in Europe, South America, Africa, Australia, like every continent. I joke and say, we facilitated acquisitions on every continent, except Antarctica. So still working on that one. But yeah, I think, it's just such a good time to build, a, a SaaS startup because there's so much opportunity, or maybe a community or e-commerce company, because the opportunities are just massive, and then the tools needed. So, let's rewind a decade ago. Building like a simple application was super fucking hard. Like, and then figuring out how to scale it was super fucking hard because there wasn't as much information being shared. There weren't, Aaron Ross hadn't come out with his book yet on like the SDR to AE model. There's just so much good information today on like how to build startups. There's tools that, no code platforms that help you get to market faster. You can validate ideas faster. So that really excites me. And I think just that alone gives so much opportunities to entrepreneurs, not just in Silicon Valley or whatever, but to like literally all across the world. And I think, that's really what we need is we need like a level playing field that gives every entrepreneur a fair chance of success. And so that's what fires me up is, and I'll give you a little story too. So, there was a company that we helped sell in India, and he sold it for I believe like a quarter million bucks, and he was 23 in India, all cash, and so he just wrote me this like heartfelt email, just saying he was gonna like pay off all of his student debt, and it was a platform that helped people with coding tests at like big FANG companies or whatever. But he was gonna like buy his mom like a house, stuff like that. Like 250,000 in another country, aside from America, can go a long, long ways. And so again, I think we're gonna see more and more like really interesting startups coming from you know places other than just the Bay Area.
I mean, you're speaking to a non-technical founder that has nobody coding, and we're scaling just fine in that. So I see
I
it too, man.
dude, I'm not technical either. I do not. I literally, if you're like Andrew, like I'll give you $1 million for access to this. I don't know where they are. Like I back in the day, like at business apps, we do some wild shit. We would uh push code. We didn't have a staging server. This was when I was running all product management. That's a big no-no. But yeah, I've had the server's keys taken away by my teams like for about a decade.
Right on. So the first half of this podcast we learned from you. The second half we're going to learn about you. So who are you, Mr. Gazdecki?
It's a broad question. I like to think of myself as just kind of a startup junkie. I love entrepreneurship. I love startups. I think I was really fortunate in life where, again, I didn't grow up with too much. So, early in when I was growing up, I just came across this thing called the internet. Have you heard of it? um, and I just enjoyed selling stuff on like eBay, and then I enjoyed building websites for like school bands, and like I really, you know, my passion and just also my professional goals aligned, and I'm just really grateful that that happened. And I always say like some people like to play like tennis on the weekend. I like to play startup. I like to, you know, that's just what I love to do. I like to surf. I grew up skateboarding. So those are some other hobbies. But yeah, I just I love to just build.
That's awesome. And you know, what do you do outside of work? What are your passions outside of work, outside of playing startup?
Um, Definitely with my family. Like I have a 2-year old son, so every moment, and that's something. I have a few non-negotiables, and this is maybe another thing to add is, when you're building a startup, I think you make a lot of personal sacrifices. I don't. Like I have lunch with my wife every single day. It's just blocked out of my calendar. You cannot get on it. And then when my son wakes up, I take him to daycare, pick him up from daycare, and then I read to him every single night. Weekends for the boy. Used to be for the boys, but now it's for little Julian. So that's been a big shift in my life, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Is he on a skateboard yet, or how old is he?
He's an adrenaline junkie. He's definitely hopped on my skateboard, but I mean he's 2.5, so we kind of got like make sure he doesn't get hurt. But I mean, he's already riding a bike. He's already got like a scooter. He loves cars. Though he's gonna be a handful when he gets older. I can already tell.
That's awesome. That is, family is everything, and that really hits home. So, all right, Andrew, break it down. Where can the listeners connect with you?
Yeah. On LinkedIn, Andrew Gazdecki, Twitter, Gazdecki, if you can spell that correctly. Or just Andrew@MicroAcquire.com if you have questions about, growing a business, selling a business, buying a business. Feel free to shoot me an email.
Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jared. Thanks for having me on.
Whoa, another great episode of Revenue Today. For show notes, links, and mentions, visit revenuetoday.live. For all of my friends in the Rev Genius community, thank you for listening. It's been awesome to spend this time with you. Please DM me any feedback and ideas in our Slack channel or on LinkedIn. If you're not in Rev Genius, join us at revgenius.com. It's free and takes only a couple seconds to sign up, and you'll be a part of a community of 27,000 revenue professionals strong. We've got it all. Looking forward to seeing you there. Catch you on the flip side. Boom.